Today's guest is Clifton Harness. He's the co-founder and the CEO at Test Fit Inc. So, Clifton, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tats. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, so we were introduced by a mutual friend and one of my past guests, and he was saying very good things about what you were doing. You you got into the entrepreneurial stuff. Did you have any family background as an entrepreneur? Like, is any of your family members entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's like in the I have my mom's family. My grandfather built an amazing spice company in San Antonio called Fiesta, starting in about 1955. My cousins are now kind of running it in the third generation, and growing up in San Antonio on the sort of summers, uh, we would, I don't know, I had friends that would like go to summer camp. I'd wake up and go to the plant and like manufacture spices. So we definitely grew up in a very kind of entrepreneurial world. But my dad, so that was my mom's family. My dad's family is a real estate development family. My grandfather got back from the Sicily campaign and became a journalist for the Washington Post in real estate. Like I think it was just a job that he found. Like he wasn't really connected to real estate, but he took that job and started writing about real estate. And one day he just realized, man, I can go make some money in real estate. Like instead of writing about it, why don't I just go do it? So he moved to Houston, which was going under a very big boom, and he's got real big into home building and light industrial. Um, and eventually, he was on the board of NAHB, which is the National Association of Home Builders. So yeah, there's a lot of my dad. My dad, he didn't do homes, but he did apartments, like higher density. He's done, I don't know, 20,000 units in his career. And anyway, so I grew up in this environment of entrepreneurship and real estate development. And yeah, so it doesn't surprise me that I am working as a CEO with my own company right now.
So, when I noticed you graduated University of Texas at Austin with an architecture degree. What was your plan when you were doing that? Were you trying to go into business yourself? Were you just interested in the space? What was the original thought?
So I, in high school, was able to take architecture class that was taught by an architect that worked at a local firm called Overland Partners. And my dad was the kind of real estate developer, and I knew I didn't want to be in spices because it was pretty boring to bottle. I was just like, that seems kind of boring. So kind of fell in love with design, and pretty early on in high school, like was pretty lucky to have like a class about architecture. And I really fell in love with like tool making and building the tools that would then help you design the building. And it could just be like a rig to cut pieces of wood more effectively, or and I just fell in love with that. And I was very fortunate to get into the UT School of Architecture. I think it was ranked number two around the time that I got in, and it really challenged me. Like architecture really grew me very deeply. I think to try to understand holistic problems, like problems from a holistic view, as opposed to just like fighting symptoms of problems. And I over the course of my time at UT, was able to work 4 internships in architecture, and I kind of ended up feeling like the architecture community would really benefit from, I don't know, more people being entrepreneurs. it was really difficult to learn because you would discover some information and maybe a partner or principal is like, oh, like, no, you shouldn't know that yet. Like, you're too young to know that. And I come from a real estate development family. So I'm like, I know how this works, guys. Like, so there was a bit of a business problem, I think, in architecture. And I got a certificate in business from UT to try to kind of understand finance and accounting, entrepreneurship, some kind of basics about business. And I kind of fell in love with finance. Like, finance was really cool. It's like, how do you uh, go score goals? And then accounting is like the guys that are like keeping track of the score. So finance I really liked, and I went home for dinner with my dad one time, and he's just like, Clifton, why don't you go work in development? Like, you clearly like finance in buildings, like that's development, like it's not architecture. And I was like, oh. So I think as a young man, you maybe don't want to do exactly what your father did, but for me, it ended up being a perfect fit. And so I got my first kind of development internships at the tail end of college, and absolutely fell in love with the absolute mad complexity of getting real estate development done. I mean, you're managing construction, you're managing timetables, you're managing finance, you're managing cash flows, you're managing legal, and then you have an architect, you have everything under the sun you have to do. And I love just the complexity of it, and absolutely fell in love with it. And that was fun for about a year until uh, my job kind of turned into site planning, and I was able to turn around planning documentation faster than what our architects could. So at this development company, we basically just started using me as a planner to plan everything. Uh, and It's really a math problem, like getting the building to be an effective tool inside a deal is a math problem, and it's a spatial math problem. And I ended up just kind of falling in love with, you know, solving that spatial math problem.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
can you give me a tangible example? Maybe not everyone will understand what you mean by spatial math problem. So walk me through that a bit.
sure. So let's say you are a real estate developer and you want to turn a piece of land near your home into an apartment building. The spatial math problem is to understand what the current market rents are and the current market occupancies. So if you look at the market, and four-bedroom units are maxed out, they're 100% occupied, but one bed units aren't. It might give you an indication of, hey, this is maybe a better place to build four-bedroom units. So you have to figure out, how to cut up your pie, the building that you can build into product market fit, one that can actually lease up people, make the building a profitable building, and therefore make it so that the developer, the GC, the architect, land broker, the landowner, everyone wins. And that asset creation is a spatial math problem. It's very difficult because in Excel, you can add a ton of units to something, but in reality, it might not actually fit. And the moment you add units, especially in the US, you got to have a ratio on how those units address parking. You have to address open space requirements, various zoning problems. And so solving housing from a deal perspective is very much a spatial math problem.
Interesting. And I've never built apartment complexes. In order to gather that information, is it readily available? Do you have to collect it yourself in terms of the market conditions to input into this math problem?
So I think it depends on what kind of developer you are or what kind of mindset you take to the project. If you're approach is we're gonna use big data to mitigate risk. Then you go and get as many data points as you can. And there's companies out there that sell data. They call literally apartment complexes every week, like, hey, what's the rent doing now for these kinds of units? And they write it down, they put it in a database, and they sell it. There's also slews of analysts that work inside firms that will literally just call and do the work themselves. So it's very much, I think, a lot harder than most people think. Like nobody's just handing you the kind of information. You got to go make a judgment call for yourself.
Sure, absolutely. So, how did that, sort of mindset and thought transition to you starting a company?
So the constraints for us were we need to process at least, I don't know, 150 sites a year in order for us to get like five or six that we're going to build. So you had these massive kind of opportunity cost meetings where you'd get like construction and design and development together, and they'd burn, 5 grand a meeting to try to understand, if they could do one deal. So I kind of looked at that and I was like, all right, that's like millions of dollars a year in OpEx that is not spent on the actual buildings. So that frustrated me, and I got a kind of a good idea about kind of a product that could work from that direct experience.
And
Um,
then and
yeah.
then so did you have the technical skills yourself? Like how did you get off the ground? Like did you raise money right away? Like how did it form?
So my co-founder Ryan Grieg, the most brilliant software engineer I've ever met. Um, he was my roommate in college. He was like the valedictorian from his high school. He's like a 4.0 student. I'm not a 4.0 student, by the way. I was telling him about the problem, and he's like, "Oh, that's kind of neat. Like that's kind of a big, complicated problem." And for guys like him, they love to find big, complicated problems to solve because that's the only way that they're going to wake up in the morning is if they have something hard to do. So he was a really great kind of partner from the beginning, and he had worked on the problem nights and weekends for a while. And then he ended up getting laid off from the mobile kind of game studio that he was working for. And that was an interesting phone call. He's like, "Hey, I just got laid off. I'm going to work on this site planning application instead of finding a new job. Is that cool with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess. I don't like have money for you to like make while you do this." And he's like, "It's fine. We can make it up in the future. I'm just really excited to work on this problem." And he worked for about a year on a minimum viable product that really it was you kind of just drew the shape of the land and it would generate a wrap, which is a kind of a more Texas typology for multifamily. It's a precast garage that's got it's a
Sure.
big rectangle and you just sort of hide it with the stick built building around it. Um, And it's about 8% of multifamily units in the country are wraps. So, I mean, podiums are 30%. If we were smart and actually knew what we were doing, Tats, we would have started with, a much larger commodity to attack. But instead, we were kind of young and naive and stupid and went with the wrap.
Well, was it
um,
easier to get the rap going first? Like, I mean, it doesn't have the largest market size, but it was
no,
just you
no, no, no,
live and
no.
learn.
Podium's way easier. So the kind of approach was we're going to build a product that we're capable of building, and we'll try to get like some beta users. And I mind you, I thought of myself as like a design architect at this point in time. Like I was going to leave development and go be like Norman Foster or something. And he ended up having the beta running, and I ended up kind of uh, convinced my then very new marriage with my wife is like, hey, I'm gonna go not make money for like 5 years so that I can chase this dream. How would you feel about that?" And she's like, "Okay, I'll trust you with this." And that was, amazing. Is just Ryan and Annalise, my co-founder, and my wife, just saying, "Yeah, we'll do it with you." Um, and we in October of 2017 we shipped that wrap generator that had a little bit of a podium tool in it, and we sold two licenses in October of 2017.
2 licenses,
Uh,
how much did that sort of bring in?
we made $500 that month. So I think all of it was spent at the bar. Like that one, we just celebrated. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but when you work on something for so long and you finally get something from it, I don't know, blew my mind. I was like, this product that I conceived of in my mind made money. And it's like, it's not like a normal product. It's not a retail product. It's literally this like process driven thing that if you're not in the AEC world, you don't really understand. So, um, yeah, that's how we got to the first sale, was just off
Yeah.
of Ryan
Uh,
Grieg's intelligence.
yeah, I mean, and when did you feel like it was picking up steam? Like, did it, after you did those first 2 sales, did it steadily increase? Was there a lull? Was there a point where it just started to, you're like, "Okay, everything's," when is that point where you felt that, everything is gonna work out?
Never. I've never felt that way.
Uh,
And I don't think I ever will. I think it's uh, naive to think that we have made it ever. AEC is so broken in so many ways and needs so many things to be fixed, that we're still in the first inning. I'm 31, and I probably will be 60 by the time I feel like I've made an impact, right? Um, so that's 30 years. Like, look what we've done in 5. Okay, let's do 6 times that amount of time. I think that we could really, eventually feel like uh, we've made it. But the industry is so far behind. It
yeah.
is.
So since, selling the first 2, like, what did you do to get the word out there? Were you doing anything special, networking? Like, how did you get, that initial momentum?
Yeah. So I don't take no for an answer. So you know, I I'd like to say that I was a stellar salesman and a stellar marketer and a stellar product guy and all these things, but in reality, like, Ryan and I grew up in a very public way in front of the entire industry over the last 5 years, and we failed a lot. Like, this is how you get the word out. You fail. Like, my close rate was 8%. I've had 2,000 customer meetings. I mean, you do the math. Like, that's a lot of no's. That's a lot of we'll see you later. Good luck with your pipe dream. And as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of people get discouraged by that.
Mm.
And
So she got a lot of, unpolite answers.
no, I wouldn't say impolite. I would say you'd go and do a pitch and they'd say, "Okay, see you later." And the answer is or maybe we'll buy this. Like, Americans are very good at being just ignoring. Like, instead of saying yes or no, they'll just ignore you. Um and I think early on I was like, "Oh yeah, like they'll come back around, like it might take a while." And we're here about 5 years later. I think we just closed a firm that I talked to 5 years ago, and they closed. Um, so, venture capital, we can talk about getting investment in a minute, but venture capital wants to see a return in about 10 years. AEC is not a place where most venture capital dollars end up because the projects last 5 years. you know, from beginning to end, it maybe is a 5-year project, and oh, we're going to get you on this new software system that's going to change rapidly over the next 5 years. Okay, good luck. So that is to say, like, we were fortunate enough to kind of bootstrap, I think, for the first, I would say 3 years or 2.5 years. But then Jesse Coors Blankenship, our seed round investor, kind of, we'd build a relationship, and he's kind of like, hey, I can really help. Like, I can help you. And I, the magnitude of relief, when you finally met like an investor that understood the product, understood the problem, understood the space, and then says, "Hey, I'll help you," really was a huge win for the company. So we got the word out by cold emailing, cold calling. Initially, I got, I don't know, 15 customers that way. And then we shifted our strategy to inbound marketing, mostly because I didn't have time to do the cold calling and cold emailing. I was like, they got to come to us. Like, we don't have enough time in the week. I was doing
Mhm.
30 or 40 demos a week. Um,
When you said inbound, you mean like SEO stuff, or what were you doing?
so outbound marketing is like, I get on your website, figure out what your email is, and email you. Inbound is, I post on LinkedIn or Twitter,
Yeah.
some content, and when people are interested in that content, they can click on it, engage with it, and then come to our website for a demo. Um, Inbound was incredibly important for our success. People across the world do not like drawing parking spaces manually and then throwing away that project the moment it doesn't work. Like, it's not a great feeling. It's an opportunity cost, and we had a product, still do have that product to solve it.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, that's very cool. So the inbound stuff was working. Okay, very nice. I mean, you talked about some of the hardships. I mean, what were the like lessons? Like, you've been at this, over 5 years now at this point. I mean, if you could go back and give yourself some advice, what would you tell yourself, when you first started? Besides, starting the
Hmm.
product somewhere else.
I think that there's not a lot of, like, the wisest way to answer that question is like, I could have gone back and done all these things differently, but in reality, like, maybe I had to do it that way so that we could end up where we are. And um, by failing and fixing your failure again and again and again, you actually build trust with people. Um, like, look at the SpaceX rockets. The early ones exploded, they fell, they didn't land on the ground right, exploded again. But they learned and they got better. And now they're sending crewed rockets. Like, human beings trust the system enough to strap themselves to the rocket and go into space. Um, I think that you have to build trust with the public, and especially in the architecture world where new ideas are often frowned upon, and not embraced. So, a lot of people kind of, I think, initially were maybe thinking that we would fail, or maybe they were rooting against us because it's like automation of jobs or whatever, uh, or that's their perception. But in the long run, we've earned their trust because, like, look, you want to have an IPOable business in AEC, you got to have the architecture community rooting for you, and you can't build automation in a way that doesn't respect this industry.
Yeah.
So test fit, we've maintained a low enough price so that architecture can adopt it, invest in it, and give us the feedback. And we've also been fortunate enough to get real estate developers and GCs using the same tool. And that's a lot of hope in my view, is that if those three communities can kind of use the same tool and communicate with it, we have a good shot at getting people on the same page.
Yeah. You talked about getting some of all the challenges in the AEC side. What are some of those other challenges? Maybe some of the ones that you're not tackling, but you're aware of.
Oh, in AEC, I think it's just a lack of empathy. Like, I think everything comes down to we have this OAC contract that breeds no innovation, and it's, design, bid, build, it segments the risk. It's really driven by, mitigating risk. Um, and you see some kind of light on the horizon with big complicated projects where it's design build, and everybody's in the same boat rowing in the same direction. I think the future is about having empathy, and if an architect has the empathy for a developer to understand that this person has literally signed their life away so that this building could get debt, then they might respect a bit more what they have to say. And if a developer truly empowers his architect to be the design visionary for a project, he'll listen when they have ideas. And you know, I always remember the kind of first conversation I ever had with a job site foreman. I was like, "Hey, if we design this building slightly differently so that the construction process could be faster, what would you do?" And he didn't have anything to say. He was like, "Nobody has ever asked me that question." And this guy did like half a billion in construction in his career. So I think it's all about empathy. We gotta move the OAC contract in a way that breeds innovation, innovation that takes risk off the table. I mean, right now it's just pegging it on people, and people make mistakes.
Yeah. So, are you saying in a small way, AI can help us have more empathy?
Yeah, I think it's totally true. In TestFit, I trained a gentleman in Austin who's maybe 55 years old, and real estate developer, very successful. Um, and he's using the tool right in front of me, and he kind of had to stop and say, "I've been in this industry for 30 years. I've never had the power to site plan something. Like, I've always relied on someone else. And right now I can see, like, in 8 seconds, that this site's not going to work with my vision on it." And it saved some architect that he works with, 3 weeks of effort, because he could tell right out the gate that it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's in my view about empathy, and he had empathy for the architect, like, right out the gate because of that. Where I see technology heading is if we can give architects empathy to how a project is doing financially within a modeling environment, then maybe it's not 30 iterations to get to a final answer. It's maybe four or five, because they're not going to build the thing in a way that's, you know, not going to get the yield on cost that it needs.
Yeah. Quicker answers, more success on projects, which means further projects and development.
Well, it's not just, it's, we're heading into a world where there's scarcity. Circular economy means scarcity. It means sustainability. And we have to do a lot more planning in order to get buildings uh, built with less material, the same amount of value created, just less material. And I don't think we're doing a whole lot of that right now.
Mm, I see. So, I mean, the next couple of years, where do you see yourself? What sort of plans or things that you're excited about with what you're doing?
So on the journey of the corporation, we did a seed round in 2020, which enabled us to build a team. It was before 2020. It was me and Ryan, and my sister was kind of half time, and then we had one engineer. So before we did a seed round, that was the company. It was just 4 people. Well, 3 and a half. uh, and then when we did the seed round, it grew to about 11. And then we decided at the end of 2020 that we were going to go for an A. And the reason why was we felt that uh, in order to accomplish our mission, which at that point in time, I think our mission was to democratize and informed building design to all stakeholders, we actually needed more engineering horsepower. Um, and in order to get more engineering horsepower, like we wanted to 10x our engineering horsepower, um, we have to prove that we're financially viable. We're a business that is investable, and to do that, we built a team that had sales, marketing, support, engineering, and product. Just basically 1 to 2 people in each kind of category, and that enabled us to get to the financial metrics that we needed to raise the $20 million Series A. Um, and then the goal of the Series A is to build a corporation. Like we already have a product that works. It has product market fit. It's growing at a rapid clip. We're getting amazing accounts with the biggest companies you'd ever hear of, and we have to have a sufficient corporation to service our customers now. And if we don't, our customers could crush us, with requests. So to that end, like we've gone from I think 12 employees at the end of October last year to now almost 30. So almost tripling in size, and it's really to build teams. Like we have a sales team, a marketing team, product team, engineering. We have 2 engineering teams now. Um, so you have to go from just you and your co-founder being able to ship a product and support it to now it's a team that ships it and support it to a full-fledged corporation that literally just builds the test fit product, sells it, and supports it.
Yeah.
So we'll be a behemoth is the goal.
So, I mean, obviously, going from just a few of you to a larger team now requires different types of skills and managerial things and leadership things. What sort of things did you have to work on or adjust to be able to sort of handle that?
So we've been very fortunate to have a great culture, and culture can cover a multitude of sins, in my view. We Ryan and I were never going to be skilled operators right out the gate because guess what? We've never had you know teams of people reporting to us. So the culture here is very important. The culture is a culture of hey, if you fail, just try to do better next time. Let people know. Let us learn from it. Let's be open and honest about what's going on. Um, and a lot of that, I think, basically solves for many problems that most businesses have. Um, I remember working in many firms where it was just absolutely dysfunctional, silos, people kind of being political about how they'd make a decision. I don't know. Here it's like everybody knows that I've failed a lot and made mistakes, and I've been very vocal about it. So that means that they are able to talk about that too. Um, you have to have a culture of hope. You have to have a culture of uh, positive. Like it has to be positive. And we're building the future of AEC. Like if we can, if we are successful, the commodity world will be greatly affected by test fit. So housing it's a very big human right that I think is kind of walked all over. And what we do is we help people plan housing. Um, we help America's corporations build their storage facilities and industrial. I mean that's a market that is basically strapped right now. The pandemic really showed just how weak our logistics were. So we do housing and logistics right now, and the culture solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, Clifton, is there anything that I did not ask you that you wanted to share?
I don't have much of an agenda. I mean, if I've gotten kind of my points across, that's good. I think that the future is bright. I think that we're also heading into a recession. I think we're heading into a part of the industry where, the last time around it shed a lot of the great architecture talent, and they never came back. And we really struggled over the last 6 or 7 years because that talent didn't exist. Um, I hope that some of these firms are capable of weathering this storm, because we can't lose the same amount of talent again. Um, it's really bad. I think when uh, the economic cycles are so devastating on an entire industry, and I don't know. My hope is that we can keep people engaged with AEC. You know, as long as we can. If not, I got another 30 years of my career to help it.